Member for Moore.
Good evening, Mr Acting Speaker. Good evening, fellow parliamentarians. It's a great honour to stand here today, as the Member for Moore. Firstly, I wish to thank the constituents of the Moore electorate for their support and, in due consideration of that, commit to representing them to the best of my ability with both energy and integrity. I thank my family, my wife Corrine, and 4 children, Callum, Rebecca, Brendan and Kieran, for their unwavering support during the campaign, on election day, and for their ongoing support since. My extended family, my brothers, sisters, father, have also been very supportive and have contributed their time, their personal effort and some of their money to the campaign, and I thank them. Last year my dear mother passed away, and when I heard that the election was scheduled for the 9th of March, which would have been my parents' 69th wedding anniversary, I knew that Mum was supporting me also. I want to acknowledge the work of Grant Woodhams, my predecessor, who represented the Moore electorate over the past 4 years, and the electorate of Greenough in the term prior to that. Grant worked hard to represent the electorate on projects such as the $30 million Dongara District High School upgrade, which he was passionate about and which he was able to see to fruition. Grant universally was known as Woody throughout the electorate and was terribly well respected and a much liked figure in the region. And in this House, where he served as Speaker in the last Parliament. And I wish Grant all the very best in his coming years of retirement. I decided to stand for Parliament after being approached by Grant and enjoyed his strong support throughout the campaign. Thanks also go to Colin Gardner, the President of the Moore branch of the National Party, and other local members, especially Jonathan Nelson from Badgingarra, who's been a great support to me in the last year. I'd also like to thank the rest of the Nationals team, people like Bryn Butler, Martin Aldridge, Claire Cregan, Jill Sowness, Paul Brown, Kathy Bowen, Rosalba Butterworth, Mia Davies, Jackie Boydell and Colin Holt, to name a few, and everyone else in the party who worked very hard to retain Moore as a national seat. The federal Nationals who assisted in the campaign, Senators Fiona Nash and Barnaby Joyce, and federal leader Warren Truss, not only helped by spending time in the electorate, but also gave me very sound advice, which I learned a great deal from. Throughout the electorate, there's been strong support for the Nationals, and I'd like to thank all those who contributed financially or by helping with signage, helping to organise events and publicity, and manning the many polling booths, because without those people there would not have been a campaign. Mr Acting Speaker, the seat of Moore is the largest non-pastoral electorate in the state and encompasses 17 local governments. It takes in the shires of Toodyay, Chittering and Gingin in the south and extends to Northampton in the north. It includes the Mullowa ward of the city of Greater Geraldton, whilst excluding the rest of that city. Moore covers nearly 72,000 square kilometres. Large parts of the former Greenough electorate were incorporated into Moore in 2008 when Greenough was abolished. Industry in Moore consists mainly of fishing, farming, mining and tourism. They are vitally important industries in this electorate. The Western rock lobster industry and other fishing industries have sustained coastal communities for generations. The transition to a full quota management system, whilst a positive change and brought about by the decline in the pluralist count, has had far-reaching consequences for coastal communities with considerable financial impacts. Still coming to terms with the quota system, communities such as Kalbarri in the north of the electorate have been doubly impacted by a downturn in tourism associated with the high Australian dollar and by recreational fishing restrictions. And I think there's a need to re-examine some of those restrictions to revitalise those communities and restore confidence in the tourism sector. Mixed farming involving grain and livestock production spans the entire electorate. Wheat was first grown in the Carnamah district in 1915 and in Dalwallinu and Three Springs more than 100 years ago. In the Kwinana port zone, the two main bulk grain receival points in the shires of Dalwallinu and Moora have in the past received more than 430,000 tonnes of grain in one season, while the vast majority of the 2.5 million tonnes annually produced in the Geraldton zone is produced in the electorate of Moore. These figures serve to illustrate the importance of grain production across the entire electorate, from Mullawa and Binu in the north to Brighams Ford in the south and Dalwallinu in the east. Mr. Speaker, Acting Speaker, yesterday, along with other members, I attended a crisis meeting attended by around 1,000 farmers in the Merredin area. And there's no doubt that a number of our WA primary producers are facing a very difficult time right now, and also in the coming year. And while it's true that most of those distressed farms lie in the eastern wheat belt, at least some of those attendees were from the Moora electorate. I'd like to thank the Premier and the current Minister of Agriculture for the interest they've shown in this situation, and I look forward to the government's response in the coming weeks to the farmers' requests. But on the whole, I remain very positive about the future of agriculture in the electorate of Moora and in the state of Western Australia. And I believe that there is a positive way forward for agriculture, and that lies in capitalising on opportunity. And that's outlined by the Nationals in their $300 million vision for agriculture that was a cornerstone of the campaign that was run in Moore and in other agricultural electorates. Mining has long been present in the Moore electorate. Copper, lead, titanium, ilmenite, zircon, rutile, garnet, hematite, magnetite, talc, oil and gas have all contributed to the economic wealth of this electorate. The diversity and magnitude of these resources should not be underestimated. Three Springs, for instance, boasts the largest talc resource in Australia. Jindalby's Carrara mine, east of Purundri, which was opened a week or so ago, is the second largest magnetite project nationally. And Tronox's West Australian operations, including the mining of mineral sands at Cataby and processing at Mouchet, represent the world's largest integrated titanium dioxide plant. Western Australia's onshore gas industry has enormous potential. They're known to be large reserves in the Midwest region, in fact in the electorate of Moore. These reserves have the potential to be an important energy source for the southwest of Western Australia. In considering the future use of these reserves, I believe we need to proceed with caution and in a manner that reflects the community's concerns around possible environmental consequences associated with the safety of our important water resources such as the Northern Yarra and Leederville aquifers. We need to recognise the rights of landholders to operate their businesses and allow farmers to fairly negotiate access agreements with the petroleum industry. And community and landholder confidence in the safety and in the equity of this industry will be essential if it's to develop smoothly in the future. Economic diversity in Moore is further enhanced by an important tourism sector. There are many notable tourism attractions in the Moore electorate. The pristine coastline that forms the southern part of the Coral Coast, the Kalbarri National Park, the Pinnacles and Nambung National Park, the Wildflower Way, Australia's only monastic town in Eunorcia, Gingins Gravity Observatory and Gravity Discovery Centre, and Dalwallinu's Discovery Centre are all enjoyed by national and international visitors looking for a bush experience or what they may consider the real Australia, and all found in a setting right on the doorstep of one of the country's major cities, Perth. In Moore, there are beautiful and deserted beaches which give way to heathlands boasting an extremely diverse and unique flora. The West Australian Government's move to create a new Department of Parks and Wildlife will be of great benefit to the Moore electorate. Kalbarri, Mount Lezua, Coalseam and Badgingarra National Parks are rich in flora with many caves and different landforms, and they have enormous potential for environmental tourism. This new department will have an important role in allowing visitors to enjoy these natural assets without causing them harm. Responsible use of land and enjoyment of the environment is very important to the residents of Moore. Many of the citizens of this electorate willingly contribute to the effort of land care by their volunteering. Those volunteers are supported by government and by the presence of entities such as the the Northern Agricultural Catchments Council and its partner organisations operating at the local level. Together they provide professional help and an important framework that sources and administers funds for the management of environmental assets throughout the electorate. The economic future of the electorate is highly dependent upon the maintenance of its environment, and I thank the West Australian Government for its past support of natural resource management and look forward to working with the new Minister of Environment to further this important activity. The historical development of Moore really commenced after the first initial pastoral developments with the establishment of the Midland Rail Line, when land was cleared for farming in the 19th century. An 8-year project that was completed in 1894, the Midland Railway joined Midland Junction to Walkway, south of Geraldton. And while roads were unreliable, this rail line enabled development throughout the district, transporting wool, grain, fertiliser, general supplies, the post and people. Amid the current debate regarding foreign ownership of land, it's interesting to note that the British-owned Midland Railway Company received 12,000 acres of land for each mile of railway that it built. This early inland development associated with farming and the railway makes Moore an electorate really in two halves. The coastal communities of Lancelin, Cervantes, Jurien Bay, Kalbarri were in the beginning populated by fishing shacks, and development of the southern coastal communities was initially limited by poor access tracks and availability of fresh water. These towns were gazetted only in the 1950s and 60s and grew rapidly with development of the export crayfish industry. However, they lacked the legacy of infrastructure, hospitals and high schools, etc., that were established in the inland towns on the Midlands Road. Perth and Geraldton, at either end of the electorate, are where many constituents access a range of services and facilities. For instance, there's more specialised medical services. Given the extent of the electorate and the location of these two major centres, there are many different and confusing administrative boundaries associated with the regional development commissions and the provision of policing, education, transport, health and emergency services. The north of the electorate is a major component of the Midwest region, while the south lies in the Wheatbelt region. Within Moore, the population dynamic has changed in recent years as tree changes have made peri-urban areas such as Toodyay and Chittering their home, and sea changes have moved into our coastal towns. Despite the influx of those seeking a change in lifestyle, there's been little provision for their educational, health and aged care needs, and there are real and serious service gaps. Services in Dongara, Lancelin, Jurien Bay and the like were based on a static population of the 1980s, and these towns are now struggling with increased demand, both from resident populations and influxes of visitors. The two major highways traversing the Moore electorate are essentially two main arteries linking Perth with the state's resources sector. The Brand Highway, Highway 1, links Perth with Geraldton and the West Pilbara. The Great Northern Highway, Highway number 95, is one of the lifebloods of the nation and the principal link between the East Pilbara and the metropolitan area. But it is narrow, and the condition of sections of this highway, called the Perth-Darwin Highway, is deplorable. Countless oversized loads transporting mining equipment use this highway. Within the town site of Bindoon, 13 sets of overhanging power lines have to be temporarily raised with the use of a portable pole to allow the passage of oversized and overheight loads. Bindoon is effectively a town in lockdown during this time. A bypass plan for the town has been developed. And although the plans for the town's bypass are public knowledge, they've not yet been gazetted, and in the meantime are affecting adversely, I'm told, property values of the residents. The further improvement of this vital transport link is of great importance to the communities that lie along its path and to the mining industry in the Pilbara. I welcome the future funding commitments for the highway that have been made by the West Australian Parliament and Government, but we'll be urging for a priority for future funding to be placed from the state and federal government on this road. My own connection to the electorate dates back to the 1980s, when I bought land in the Gingin Shire and later on in the Dandaragan Shire at Badgingarra, where my wife and I continue to farm today. A desire to influence the future direction of the local district led me to nominate for and to be elected to the Council of the Shire of Dandaragan 12 years ago. After an apprenticeship served under then Shire President Gary Snook, himself a former member for Moore, I served as Shire President for the next 9 years. My service in local government, coupled with the co-parenting of our 4 children and caring for ageing relatives, has enforced the importance of some key issues common to regional Western Australia, those being education, health and aged care. According to the 2011 census, 22% of Western Australia's population reside in the regions outside Greater Perth. But we need to not overlook the wealth generated in those regions, in the agriculture, mining, fishing, tourism sectors. And let's consider the imbalance relating to funding and services spent on infrastructure and facilities beyond the fringes of Perth CBD and suburbia that ensued for many decades. Under the inspired leadership of Brendan Grills, the National's strong independent advocacy for regional Western Australia, the subsequent introduction of royalties for regions, is going some way to redressing that imbalance. So many community facilities and services such as Patient Assistance Travel Scheme, hospital upgrades, improved mobile coverage and funding for educational and regional residential colleges have injected new life to regional communities. The devolution of power is one of the core principles that underlines and defines the National's beliefs, and one which I wholeheartedly support. Allowing those in the regions to contribute to bottom-up decision-making processes is not only respectful but empowering to local taxpayers and residents. To this end, the Country Local Government Fund provides local government with a flexible means of building and maintaining infrastructure. Council and community with full knowledge of the local and unique circumstances they confront can prioritise spending on infrastructure. In recent years, this funding has provided, for example, the repair and improvement of a footbridge over the Avon River in 2J. Without this expenditure, children in the town would not be able to walk to school, as the local school lies on one side of the river and most of the developed town lies on the other. The redevelopment of the Jurien Bay foreshore and jetty, which enables the town to provide a focal point for visitors and locals alike, was timed to maximise the economic benefit of the opening and development of Indian Ocean Drive. The Country Local Government Fund has provided for an early childhood centre in Perenjori, a town which is enjoying a growth spurt since the development of iron ore mining in the area, especially at Carrara. It has provided much needed funds that have allowed maintenance and upgrade work to be carried out in the Mullawa swimming pool, a vital resource for that community's recreation and health. Having walked the streets of Mullawa on a day when the temperature was around 46 degrees, I can personally attest to the value of that investment. Throughout the electorate, there have been many other investments and projects developed through the Country Local Government Fund, projects that I would contend it would be difficult for a state-based agency to identify and to develop. You needn't look much further than Federal Labor's $47 billion Building the Education Revolution to see a stirring example of a government program that is top-down driven, impressing someone else's ideas on local communities, in that case, school communities. Well, I thought someone was going to do that for me, but yes, could I have an extension, please, Mr. Acting Speaker?
Absolutely, thank you. Extension granted. Thank
you, Minister for the North West, whatever it is. Now, where was I? Anyway, the challenge of providing adequate standard of education, health and aged care for those West Australians living beyond the northern, southern and eastern fringes of Perth is enormous. Population density in Moore is relatively low and it's dispersed over very many small communities. In the south of the electorate, many people live in rural subdivisions and in small holdings lying just outside the Perth metropolitan area. With the exception of Moora, the larger communities in the electorate, such as Dongra, Kalbarri and Jurien Bay, have poorly developed services sectors. And to some extent, this has been addressed in recent years with such things as the redevelopment of the Donga District High School and the planned developments in Jurien Bay, but there certainly remains much to be done. The need to provide adequate education, health and aged care to the citizens of Moore is the principal reason why I stood for Parliament in the first place, and I intend to do all I can to ensure that these services are improved to my constituents. Maintaining and improving standards of education in rural and remote Western Australia presents a huge challenge for this government. A dispersed population base and recruitment and poor teacher recruitment and retention rates add to the challenge of making appropriate education accessible to all. One of the contentious issues at the moment, as many of you will know, is the change to Year 7 structures throughout country Western Australia. Moving Year 7s to high school in line with the adoption of the Australian curriculum is a big step for rural communities that are already scratching to find a junior hockey, footy or netball team. And my wife and I have experienced firsthand the emotional wrench of sending 12-year-old kids off to boarding school. In 2015, country parents will lose their 11-year-olds. I understand that the government is prepared to work with communities and families to ensure that this transition, which ultimately will improve the education of our children, is as smooth as possible. And I thank the Western Australian Government and Minister for Education for their consideration and understanding of this sensitive issue. Public senior high school options in the electorate are limited to the Central Midlands Senior High School at Moora and the Moora Ag College, which leaves parents and students with few options other than boarding in Perth and Geraldton. Inaugural Catholic College in Geraldton recently announced that it will be closing its doors to boarders after 2015. This will remove one of the more affordable private boarding school options currently available to our constituents. An alternative boarding facility exists at the Geraldton Residential College, and the current and planned capacity of the residential college is, however, quite limited. And unless it is able to expand its facilities, these students from the north of the electorate will have to make the long trek to Perth to a boarding school, a move which may incur considerable extra cost for their families. And I pledge to be working towards supporting the Geraldton Regional College in being able to ensure these students can remain in the Midwest region. In my view, there's a need to investigate the use of technologies to provide innovative solutions and boost facilities at the many district high schools in the electorate to help make up for the shortfalls in rural and remote education. Distance education, though, needs to be engaging and relevant. We do not want to see a scenario where small groups of rural students are offered subjects via distance education with inadequate supervision or stimulation. The community at Jurien Bay, with the support of the West Australian Government through Royalties for Regions, is currently developing a new civic centre which will house a purpose-built information technology communication centre. Through a formal partnership, the local high school will be able to access the best technology available, supporting its delivery of distance education programs. Such programs give rural youth access to quality educators anywhere in the nation and perhaps in the world. The quality of available education is a major consideration to families with children. In order to attract professional persons to a town, and in turn allowing the town to achieve its full growth potential, parents want to be sure that their children will not be disadvantaged by the standard of education on offer. If parents can be so assured, then the growth of communities such as Jurien Bay will be accelerated, assisting the state to prepare for expected and continuing population growth. The difficulty of recruiting and keeping GPs, general practitioners, in country districts has been well documented. Often on call 24/7, country doctors working in isolation run the risk of burnout. Supporting them with other GPs and a good network of allied health professionals is essential in the delivery of community health programs and preventative health. The Southern Inland Health Initiative, funded by Royalties for Regions, is supporting the communities in Moore to both recruit doctors and essential allied health staff. The initiative is encouraging the introduction of innovative service delivery to the region through programs such as telehealth. Rural and remote health services stand to gain a great deal from the use of telehealth, whereby country patients are able to access specialist advice via video consultation. Telehealth services have been made available with specialists, consultant physicians, psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, midwives, practice nurses and Aboriginal health workers, ready to assist the on-ground staff, thereby greatly increasing the level of care to those presenting to the many health centres dispersed across the electorate. Within the communities of the electorate, there are a number of different organisations providing services to patients requiring mental health services. Over the past few months, I've had many conversations with residents who are either unaware of the services on offer or had told me of the difficulties their family members had experienced in gaining access to those services, sometimes with tragic consequences. While there are a range of private and public agencies operating in the electorate, greater coordination of available services and integration of services would lead to much better outcomes. The Patient Assistance Travel Scheme, which has received a funding boost through royalties for regions, has provided invaluable support to country persons who have to travel to access specialist medical services in major centres. The qualifying criteria for this assistance is set at a level which rules out many of the residents of Moore, people who often live just a few kilometres too close to Perth to be eligible. These residents are living in communities without any regular public transport links to Perth and are therefore greatly disadvantaged, and I'll be seeking recognition for their needs in future funding. The lack of aged care in the electorate is very serious and probably greater in Moore than any other electorate. Facilities are provided at Northampton and Dalwallinu hospitals, in Mullawa and at the Moora Lodge, but they are grossly inadequate for an electorate with a population the size of Moore. Towns such as Dongara, Kalbarri and Jurien Bay present as an attractive option to retirees, but they are severely lacking when it comes to aged care services. Jurien Bay has taken a positive step of working towards becoming an age-friendly centre. A recent study found that 21% of Jurien Bay residents were over the age of 65, compared to state average of around 12%. The same study noted that there were few residents over the age of 80, suggesting that while retirees are attracted to a town such as Jurien Bay, they must, in the longer term, leave as their needs increase and their health fails. The situation is quite similar to in other communities such as Dongara and Kalbarri. The Moora Freya Lane Lodge, located adjacent to the Moora District Hospital, provides a fine example of the benefits of having elderly citizens remain in the community and maintain family connection. The young can appreciate the value of the elderly, and the elderly can continue with community activities and maintain the networks. I'm happy to say that recent funding from royalties regions under the Action Agenda and Country Local Government Fund will enable the Moora Freya Lodge to expand. There is, however, very little secure dementia care in the region, and whilst it's difficult to make provisions for that care, it certainly warrants consideration in our larger centres. The Wheatbelt Development Commission, in conjunction with local communities, will be developing strategies to provide a more appropriate level of aged care in the Wheatbelt region, and this will benefit the southern part of the electorate. I'll be seeking to extend the lessons learnt by that strategy to benefit the entire electorate of Moore. Mr Acting Speaker, the Royalties Regions program has provided much needed funds for regional infrastructure and services. It's helped redress the imbalance between country and city, be it the fuel card that assists pensioners with the cost of country travel, the upgrade of country sporting facilities, and allowance to assist those who, by dint of their geographic isolation, have no choice but to send their children to boarding school, or new or upgraded medical facilities, housing to attract medical and other professionals, or the upgraded telecommunications. Further investment in technology will serve a vital purpose in enabling those in the electorate to access health and educational services regardless of their location. In closing, the experience of traversing the electorate of Moore over the past year and speaking to so many constituents has left me with an overriding view that the issues I've spoken of tonight are of the utmost importance to many residents throughout the electorate. Perhaps the most indelible impression of the election campaign has been made by my interaction with the Aboriginal community at Mullawa. The recollection of walking past many empty brick houses owned by the state of Western Australia in a town where families are crowded in the 50-year-old asbestos-ridden hovels surely needs some investigation. The most touching of conversations I had whilst door knocking was in Mullawa, an exchange with a very articulate and intelligent young Aboriginal woman with a babe in her arms, just a teenager himself, I'm sure, who was despairing about the life that lay ahead for her girls. She wanted to know what I could do to make a better future for her daughters and to ensure their future safety. I have to report that I walked away that day thinking that probably would not be able to do much for those aims. I don't want to feel that way at the conclusion of the next 4 years. Thank you, Mr Acting Speaker, for listening to me.
Thank you, Member.